The big-eyed Jeep Grand Cherokee of the penultimate, third generation, 2004 to 2010, was fundamentally different from its predecessors, built on a Mercedes platform, with an independent front suspension, rack and pinion steering and a mass of electronics. How does all this affect reliability? Regardless of the place of birth, and the Jeep Grand Cherokee was made on both sides of the ocean, in Detroit, Index WK, and Austrian Grass, WH, you cannot be afraid for the bodies. They are welded and painted to last. Only early years of production have rust spots on the lower edge of the front fenders, which, by the way, dealers have to repaint for free, since the tin relies on a 10-year warranty. Exterior chrome trim gives way to road chemistry much faster. The radiator grille, side moldings, and trim on the tailgate were often changed under warranty in just 1 or 2 years. It is difficult to hide the past years in the interior. The leather finish is not of the best quality. There are practically no cars with fabric upholstery on our market, and it is still sometimes combined with leatherette, which often cracks after 3 to 4 years. Hard plastic front panel, center console, and doors over time begins to squeaky complain about uneven roads. The richness of the voice acting is enhanced by the fuel gurgling in the tank under the driver, the creaks of the seats, the rustling of moving contacts when the steering wheel is turned, and the rattling lock of the fifth door glass. By the way, open the trunk and hood more carefully in winter. Because of the gas springs that have weakened after 3 to 5 years in cold weather, they can play a cruel joke, slamming the lid unfriendly on the back. Another nuisance is the high humidity in the cabin. It's easy to figure out the culprits of the wet business. It's either the hatch drainage not cleaned in time, the hatch itself sticks due to a malfunctioning control module that requires flashing, or an unreliable fifth door lift glass seal. In an unfortunate set of circumstances, the trunk lock will also suffer, which at the same time will immobilize and door locks. And this is not all surprises from electricians. Due to the failure of the motors, the mirrors stop folding, corrosion destroys the circuit boards inside the rear lights, and under warranty, a lot of serviceable microclimate control units and radio tape recorders were replaced, and that's all because of burnt-out soldered backlight bulbs. It is no wonder that craftsmen improved the design. You can solder light bulbs for $80 to $100. There are also independent problems with the climate. If the motor of the stove, $320, starts to drive in the Stakhanov style exclusively at maximum speed, the control relay is to blame. And if the climate, on the contrary, declares a silent strike, first of all take a look at the instrument panel. Did the full iconostasis of control lamps light up? Do not panic. You need to replace or resolder the contact group of the ignition switch. On the grands of the first 2 years of production, starters are often denied. But in general, gasoline engines are surprisingly reliable. Without much effort, they live up to at least 300 to 350,000 kilometers, but only if you follow a number of rules. For example, not knowing the ford, do not climb not only into rivers, but also into large puddles. The air intake is designed so unsuccessfully that water that barely spills over the bumper threatens the motor with a water hammer. The resource of timing chains is inversely proportional to the number of sharp starts. Fans of street racing will need replacement for stretched chains before 80 to 100,000 kilometers. In winter, the crankcase ventilation system may ask for warmth and care. The receiver box at the inlet will be full of oil. The check valve is to blame, which is stuck in the open position due to frozen condensate. And, of course, you need to monitor the cooling system and the cleanliness of the radiators, aluminum heads resting on cast iron engine blocks, from $850 a piece, easily warp when overheated. To the younger, 6-cylinder engine with a volume of 3.7 liters, in 20% of cars, there are probably no other comments. The other extreme is also good, the 6.1-liter V8 monster of the Hemi family on the charged version of the SRT8, for 8% of cars. But one should not forget about the amount of taxes for its 425 horsepower and about an appetite of more than 30 liters per 100 kilometers. About the 8's 4.7, 13% of offers. On cars older than 2008, something else needs to be remembered. They can be capricious, requiring a firmware of the electronic control unit. And okay, if because of this only the ignition coils, $100 a piece, suffered, the engine could stall right on the go, under the gas release. And the roar from under the hood, which suddenly announced the surroundings, will have to be calmed down by replacing the broken exhaust manifold mounting studs, $15 each, with drilling their remnants. That's why the mechanics are asking for $300 for the work. The 5.7 Hemi engine, next in rank, is notable for the MDS, multi-displacement system, half-cylinder deactivation system, which accepts extremely low viscosity oil with an index of 5W20, otherwise the tricky valve clearance hydraulic compensators, which in combination are MDS control valves, will fail. Another culprit of stupidity in pre-styling cars with a 5.7 engine older than 2008 can be a braking electronic throttle. You will have to buy a new damper drive and gas pedal unit. And how does the high-torque and quiet 3-liter turbo diesel Mercedes-Benz 0M642 Series EXL, according to Chrysler classification, feel suitable for an SUV? Alas, it is not only the most popular, 50% of cars, but also the most problematic. The only consolation, a similar unit works on many Mercedes C, E, ML, CLK, and CL classes, so mechanics know it like the back of their hand. Ask any owner of a middle-aged diesel Grand what a swirl is, and he will answer without hesitation that it is a swirl motor, $350, that is, an intake manifold damper actuator. Moreover, a diesel engine can lose power not only due to the natural death of the drive electric motor after 150 to 180,000 kilometers, but also much earlier. For example, the servo can overwork trying to turn dampers that are densely overgrown with carbon deposits, thank you to the EGR recirculation system, if the plastic damper shafts do not break first, and you do not have to change the entire manifold for $700. And on cars older than 2008, oil enters the long-suffering motor through a leaky sealing ring in the turbocharger inlet pipe. After 3 or 4 years, a diesel engine can also drowsy through the sensor connectors, pan and exhaust manifold gaskets. This will be prompted by gray steam locomotive smoke from the exhaust pipe, or the filler cap. The last leak is not a trifle at all, as well as inaccurate topping up of oil. The oil flows straight onto the generator and disables it. But the EXL engine has no purely diesel problems. Do not rank among them glow plugs that burn out after 5 or 6 years. But they need to be changed immediately. Even one failed candle can pull the replacement of the control unit. But it was the diesel Grands that distinguished themselves by a curiosity. They often rot through and through. Fuel tanks cost as much as $2,500. It is curious that on petrol versions, the tanks are not steel, but plastic, completely indifferent to the dirt accumulating under them, which, like a scraper, an unsuccessfully profiled tank protection picks up off-road. By the way, when choosing a Grand Cherokee with the hope of off-road exercises, do not forget to make sure that he has a front drive axle. North American rear-wheel drive cars are rare birds, but sometimes they fly to us. And from the point of view of all-wheel drive transmissions, in terms of reliability, the simpler one is preferable. Quadra-Track I with a single range transfer case on machines with V6 engines. Minimum electronics, minimum problems. In the more advanced Quadra-Track 2 system with electronic locking of all differentials, the FDCM, final drive control module sometimes bugs, the contacts and the wiring disappear, and the servo for switching the RSDACA modes and solenoids for blocking cross-axle differentials do not always live up to 150,000 kilometers. The same mileage is also critical for the mechanical part of any of the transmissions. As a rule, it is necessary to update the oil seals, and even the bearings of the transfer case and axles, adjust the buzzing front and rear gearboxes, and sometimes change the stretch transfer chain and even the one-time front drive shaft with playable non-removable crosses. You don't have to break your head over the choice of gearbox. There are only 5-speed automatics. But in alliance with V8 gasoline engines, it will be the Chrysler 5-45 RFE box, and with the rest of the engines, the Mercedes unit of the 722.6 series, W5A580 in the Chrysler classification, known since 1996. In terms of maintenance, the American box is more convenient, only it has a dipstick to check the oil level. The resource of both automatic transmissions is close and is about 200 to 250,000 kilometers, but each has its own source. The American has a foolish and requiring a flashing control unit. The weak point in the electrics of the German box is the contacts of the mode switch, requiring after 100,000 kilometers cleaning the tracks or replacing the selector. After 150,000 kilometers, oil leaks occur through the connector of the electronic control unit, but the main refusenik is the hydraulic valve block. It is noteworthy that when slipping off-road, both units quickly overheat and go into emergency mode. By the way, There is another reason for the stupor of the automatic transmission: the failure of any of the ABS sensors, $80, after 100,000 kilometers. The rear-dependent suspension migrated from the previous generation Grand Cherokee WJ/WG practically unchanged, therefore there are fewer surprises from it. The replacement of shock absorbers, all levers and panhard rods is rarely needed before 120,000 kilometers. But the independent front suspension of third-generation cars is not for you, the eternal beam of the Grand of the previous series. There is something to break here. For cars of the first 2 years of production, the bushings and stabilizer struts and steering rods rarely lasted longer than 10 to 20,000 kilometers. Then the manufacturer changed the supplier of the rods. The bushings with a modified mount became more durable, but the struts remained weak. After 50 to 60,000 kilometers, the turn of the front shock absorbers, brake discs, wheel bearings, and silent blocks of the front gearbox comes. After 100,000 kilometers, the rack and pinion steering mechanism may leak. The upper and lower ball joints hold the same, up to 100 to 120,000 kilometers, but the upper ones have to be changed along with expensive levers. Total. In general, the real Indian cannot reach the reliability of Toyota. So after all, the Grand Cherokee costs an average of 300,000 rubles cheaper than the Land Cruiser. A Land Rover Discovery and Mitsubishi Pajero, which cost about the same as the Grand, are even more problematic. So, if you need a thoroughbred rogue, then you can still count on the Grand Cherokee, better for a restyled one, which is younger than 2008, with a 3.7 engine.